Chapter 31, Peak Special Effect. At first glance, the pair of 1,000 refined heavy silver hammers didn't appear eye-catching. Their grey exterior made them appear like ordinary forging hammers. Upon closer inspection, however, one would discover dark, wave-like patterns covering its whole body. The dark wavy patterns on the handle even seemed to be nurturing an endless strength. A spiral pattern twisted along the hammer's handles, down to the very end, where it stopped at a sharp point. He had spent 3 whole days forging these hammers. Little by little, during the forging process, he could feel in his blood that he was doing half the work for twice the results. Even though he worked with such efficiency, it had still taken him 3 whole days to complete the project. It's finished. Let's see what the 1,000 refined special effect is, Mang Tian said to Tang Wuling. Even a master blacksmith like Mang Tian had expectant eyes. MN. Tang Wuling nodded and gripped the pair of 1,000 refined heavy silver hammers in his hands. He had already conducted a series of measurements after forging them. The hammer in his left hand weighed 152 kilograms, while the hammer in his right hand weighed 166 kilograms. Although these hammers appeared small, their weight could definitely be described by using one word: astonishing. As Tang Wuling held the spiral patterned handles, he could sense the soul power in his body surging forth. In a flash, his soul power connected with the 2 hammers. Although Tang Wuling's increase in strength wasn't small by any measure, it wasn't enough to solely rely on brute strength when forging these hammers. Even if he had innate divine strength, there was still the restriction of him being only 9 years old. As he felt the connection between his blood and these hammers, it was as if they grew lighter by a bit. Moreover, with the addition of his soul power, his grip on the 2 hammers became exceptionally steady. Tang Wuling took out a chunk of metal from the forging furnace that had been prepared beforehand. After a moment, his eyes focused, and he gave the customary light tap on the chunk of metal with the hammer in his left hand. Ding ding ding. 3 brittle notes resounded. Tang Wuling stood there foolishly while Mang Tian's pupils contracted momentarily. Test it out again, Mang Tian eagerly said. Tang Wuling once again tapped the chunk of metal with the hammer in his left hand. Ding ding ding. 3 brittle notes resounded once again, despite the fact that he had only tapped the metal once. Use a heavy strike, Mang Tian said deeply. Tang Wuling's right hand was already trailing an arc in the air as he heavily hammered the chunk of metal. Dang dang dang. 3 crisp bangs exploded out. Due to the stronger strike this time, Tang Wuling and Mang Tian were clearly able to see that the moment the hammer made contact with the chunk of metal, 2 blade images similar to the 1,000 refined heavy silver hammer had appeared behind it. The 2 extra dangs had come from those phantom copies. This is... Tang Wuling looked towards Mang Tian in bewilderment. Mang Tian stared blankly, nearly losing his voice as he said, "Stacked hammers effect. Teacher, what is the stacked hammers?" Mang Tian looked at him with eccentric eyes. "You brat, you really are a little monster. Even I haven't ever forged hammers with the stacked hammers effect." After a few frantic breaths, Mang Tian was able to calm himself down. Mang Tian had thought that Tang Wuling's first 1,000 refinements would have a pretty good special effect, but he had never expected that it would actually be such an outrageous one. The reason blacksmiths use the blood sacrifice for their first 1,000 refinements is because it usually has a good special effect. Thus, the blood sacrifice will connect the metal with your blood vessels and push the awakened special effect to its peak. As a result, almost all blacksmiths will have their first 1,000 refined work be a pair of forging hammers that they will use throughout their life. Tang Wuling was a smart kid, so he was immediately able to understand that Mang Tian had been prepared to give that chunk of heavy silver to him the moment he had taken it out. Tang Wuling wasn't too clear about the exact value of heavy silver, but he understood that it was exceedingly valuable, especially since it was such a large chunk of purified heavy silver. Mang Tian continued on. There are several amazing special effects that can be produced by the 1,000 refinements, but only an effect that is truly fitting for its user can be considered perfect. I've already explained to you before that the first mold of 1,000 refined metal will be its peak. Any subsequent forgings to change its shape will inevitably cause damage to its internal structure, thus influencing its quality. As a result, it is exceedingly rare for the first forging of the metal to have a suitable effect. Tang Wuling clearly understood the meaning of his teacher's words. So you're saying that the stacked hammers effect of my heavy silver hammers is a peak special effect? Moreover, it's very suitable for my heavy silver hammers. Mang Tian nodded and smiled. I'm actually a bit envious. After the blood sacrifice, these hammers with such a peak special effect can only be used by you. The so-called stacked hammers is when a strike of the hammer causes resonates within itself and creates a second, or maybe even a third strike. You have a thrice stacked hammer, which is also the peak of the stacked hammers effect. Simply said, when you try to 100 refined metals in the future, your thrice stacked hammers will cut down the necessary forging time by half. The 2 stacked hammers should have a power of 70% and 50% of the original strike. Once you've gained better control of the stacked hammers effect, you'll definitely be able to do half the work for twice the results, no matter what metal you're forging. Tang Wuling asked, controlling the stacked hammers effect. Mang Tian replied, it's actually quite hard to control. However, your hammers are blood sacrificed in us. It's like the hammers are integrated into your body, making controlling much easier. The blood sacrifice creates a sort of fantastic bond between one's blood and the metal. Blood sacrificed metals can only be forged by the one who offered their blood. As a result, blood sacrificed 1,000 refined items are the personal items of the blacksmith. Even if others sacrifice their blood instead, they would have to forge it themselves for the best product. Thus, the blood sacrifice isn't commonly used when forging. Blacksmiths rarely create their own blood sacrifice products. Tang Wuling had bad luck in the aspect of his martial soul and spirit soul. It seemed that he had finally found his luck on the path of forging. With the stacked hammers effect of his 1,000 refined heavy silver hammers, he would undoubtedly be able to smoothly walk the path of a blacksmith in the future. You must practice diligently and quickly learn to control the stacked hammers, Mang Tian said. In addition, try to keep your hammers a secret. The competition within the blacksmithing world is just as intense as the world of soul masters. Until you're able to protect your hammers, you can't lightly reveal them. Understand? Tang Wuling hadn't completely understood the meaning behind Mang Tian's warning, but he nodded nonetheless. He knew that whatever his teacher told him to do was for his own good. I'll give you these then. Mang Tian lifted up his hand. 2 metal hoops rested in his palms. These 2 metal hoops were grey in appearance, but were actually forged from 1,000 refined heavy silver. Chapter 32, Heavy Silver Storage Rings. Mang Tian said, this is what I made yesterday. Both of them posses 1/8 of a cubic meter of space. It's just enough for you to use. Tang Wuling stared at Mang Tian in shock. In his 3 years of learning at the elementary academy, in addition to Mang Tian's words, he was well aware of what they were. Teacher, are these storage soul tools? I can't accept them. They're too valuable. Mang Tian said, these are storage soul tools of the lowest grade. They don't even have a soul power battery, so only a soul master can use it by pouring their own soul power into it. It's really not worth that much money. You've already worked for me for so long and your wages weren't that high either. You can count this as a bonus. Tang Wuling was stammering as he said, but I've already accepted your heavy silver. A storage soul tool. It was actually a storage soul tool. He didn't even dare to think of obtaining one, but now, 2 were right in front of him. His teacher was even gifting it to him. How could he not want them? It was just that he had already received too much from his teacher. Mang Tian pulled Tang Wuling's hand and slipped the heavy silver ring on. The ring adjusted its size to fit his wrist just perfectly. Afterwards, he did the same with the other arm. Although these rings seemed dull, when Tang Wuling looked at them, they seemed full of meaning to him. Tang Wuling couldn't help but tear up a bit at the sight of those rings. Teacher. Mang Tian had a wooden expression as he said, the fist doesn't leave the hand, music doesn't leave the mouth. For us blacksmiths, it is the hammer that doesn't leave our hands. Are you going to carry your hammers around with you when you roam the streets? You must remember, blood sacrificed 1,000 refined metals must be used frequently. Your aura, your blood vessels, and your soul power will all nurture it. The longer you're with it, the stronger the bond. If you grow powerful enough in the future, it might even gain another refinement effect. But then, go home now and pack up your things. Come visit me one more time before you leave for East City. Tang Wuling suddenly recalled something and said to Mang Tian, teacher, you previously said this is your own work. Could it be that you're a soul guide master? Mang Tian went silent for a moment. I can be considered one, but I'd rather just be a blacksmith. I'm not able to walk too far on the path of a soul guide master. You'll understand why in the future. Now run along and go properly cultivate your soul power. You must remember that soul power is the foundation of everything. Even if you have innate divine strength, it will still have its limits. Moreover, on the Douluo continent, no matter the occupation, soul power is crucial once you reach the upper levels. In the future, you definitely can't fuse with just any spirit soul. Yes. Try out your heavy silver rings. You just need to insert some soul power into them and use your mind to control it. Then it'll store or take out any items you want. Tang Wuling nodded, then picked up his 2,000 refined heavy silver hammers. As the era changed, soul tools began to penetrate deeply into human society. In fact, not all soul tools needed soul power to operate. The name simply stuck to it being the original name that was used long ago. Humanity had already learned how to exploit the power of the wind, water, sun and so on. With these new methods, they have been able to manufacture energy similar to soul power. This new energy was used in every trade, especially in the development of soul mechas. Soul mechas have already been turned into the main combat weapon of the Federation. Even Tang Wuling had encountered soul tools in his life. For example, the soul lamp in his home, or those vehicles powered by soul energy on the roads. There were many more kinds of soul tools. Even the forging station in front of him was a soul tool, even with how prevalent it was in society. However, this was still the first time that he owned a soul tool himself. Furthermore, Tang Wuling clearly knew from the storage soul rings carved array inscriptions that it wasn't a low-grade soul tool like his teacher said. This was a soul tool that was specially handmade. Its market price was definitely high. He still accepted this gift. Tang Wuling really did like them, and he did need these heavy silver rings. He engraved his teacher's kindness into his heart. Such a great kindness couldn't be thanked with simple words, so he didn't say anything. A dim silver light twinkled as Tang Wuling controlled the rings with his thoughts. He felt the weight in his hands disappear as the 2,000 refined heavy silver hammers entered the heavy silver rings around his wrists. 1/8 of a cubic meter of space wouldn't be considered big, but it was still enough to hold one of the 1,000 refined heavy silver hammers with some room to spare. For these kinds of short forging hammers, their length didn't even exceed 50 centimeters. Urging on the heavy silver rings would consume a bit more soul power, but the amount was still minuscule. Even a soul master with rank 11 soul power like Tang Wuling wasn't burdened by it. With another thought, soul power poured into the rings and the two hammers reappeared once more in his hands. This was undoubtedly the mysterious magic of the storage soul tool. Mang Tian nodded. You run on home now. Just remember my warnings. Yes. On the road home, Tang Wuling was practically basking in joy. His 1,000 refined heavy silver hammers had a peak special effect and he received a pair of heavy silver rings. This was already a great surprise for him and they had already become his most precious things. Ziran, have you really decided? Lang Yue said as she looked at her husband with eyes full of distress. Tang Xiran let out a sigh. My weakness has already affected our son's future. I can't go on like this. For the sake of our son, how can this be considered difficult? I have already promised them. Lang Yue said with eyes on the verge of tears. But if it's like that, then who knows how long it'll be before we can see our son again. Tang Xiran said, if only Lin Lin was an ordinary child. Then he could live an ordinary and happy life with us. However, our son isn't ordinary at all. On the contrary, he's outstanding. If it wasn't for my weakness, then maybe he would have been able to fuse with a good spirit soul. Then he would definitely be able to progress even further on his path and accomplish great things. Mang Tian told me that Lin Lin has a tenacious temperament and he's far more mature than his peers. Moreover, he's naturally talented in the field of forging. As long as Lin Lin continues learning under him, Lin Lin will definitely surpass him in the future. Mang Tian is already a 6-star master blacksmith. What kind of level will Lin Lin reach if he surpasses Mang Tian? And no matter how much he forges, he is still a soul master. His soul power and spirit soul still count as his foundation. As his father, I've already acted so timidly for so many years of serenity. Now it's our son's time. I have decided. I will fight for our son's sake from now on. Chapter 33. First arrival in Easty City. Easty City. This was the second largest seaside city in the Sun Moon Federation. Its main feature was its port, which served as a nexus for traveling the seas and exploiting the resources of the ocean. The city had a population of over 3 million people. By exploiting the natural resources in the ocean, the city was able to prosper. Even when compared to the rest of the Sun Moon Federation, it could still be considered a second-tier city. Easty City had a long history and its overall appearance had preserved its original state of a simple and unadorned style. In the last several hundred years, the Sun Moon Federation had taken extra care to protect some of the more ancient buildings. Thus, many of the millennia-old buildings could be found in this ancient city. Easty City Soul Train Station. A dark blue soul train slowly entered the station and came to a stop. In Easty City, nearly all of the soul trains were blue in color. After coming to a stop, the train's doors opened up, letting the people on board off. Many people greeted each other, but after a moment, the station returned to its usual hustle and bustle as people headed towards the exit. Tang Wuling tightly held onto his rucksack as he followed the stream of people towards the exit. This was the first time he had ever been to such a major city, so his curious gaze was wandering all over the place. The train station's ceiling was constructed from a bunch of metal tubes. With a glance, Tang Wuling could tell that all these metal tubes had been casted and were pressed into completion like ordinary metal. Tang Wuling's expression wasn't too good and he seemed rather gloomy. Before his eyes was an unfamiliar environment. Naturally, a 9-year-old child like him would inevitably feel a bit frightened by this. He had come to Easty City to attend the Easty City Academy. He had thought his mom or dad would have accompanied him here, but his dad told him he was a big kid already and that he should go and experience it for himself. After buying him a ticket, they brought him to the Soul Train and saw him off. This was the first time Tang Wuling was so far away from home. Even after leaving the house, Lang Yue had been tirelessly instructing him on various matters. His mind had already gone blank when he arrived and he could only follow the stream of people outwards with a face full of perplexion. While he was following the stream of people, it suddenly split in two, giving Tang Wuling a clear look at a polished black soul car that was parked on the platform. The stream of people had split in order to avoid this car. Although he didn't recognize what type of car this was, he could tell from its exterior that it was absolutely high class. The body of the car was slender and sleek. Its 4 wheels had caterpillar tracks on them. It seems it was an all-terrain vehicle. Beside the car doors stood 2 men in black suits who were peering into the crowd. When Tang Wuling neared the car, the 2 men found their target. One of the men walked in Tang Wuling's direction with large strides and respectfully called out, "Young master." Naturally, this address wasn't directed at Tang Wuling. While he was looked around for this young master, a youth strode out from behind him. This youth looked to be about the same age from his appearance. He was dressed in blue from head to toe and had short brown hair. When Tang Wuling turned around to look, the youth had already walked past his side, so Tang Wuling was only able to catch a glimpse of the side of his face. Fair white skin, a straight nose, eyes that were slightly sunken in, long eyelashes that curled up slightly and eyes that were deep green in color. Right at that moment, Tang Wuling was pushed from the side and stumbled into that young master's shoulder. Staggering backwards from the collision, the youth caught himself and abruptly turned towards Tang Wuling. The youth was handsome, but Tang Wuling could clearly feel that he had a cold and arrogant temperament. The youth's expression soured, but after a glance, he continued walking towards the soul car. His expression wasn't one of indifference to his offender, rather, it was one of disdain. "My apologies." Tang Wuling hastily said. The man who had stepped forward to greet his young master raised his hand and pushed Tang Wuling away, back into the crowd, nearly causing him to fall over. "Be careful, you hick," the man in black said fiercely before following the youth to the car. The other man in black opened the car door for the young master with one hand, while the other rested on top of the door. The youth didn't turn back even once, and directly entered the car. The 2 men in black quickly entered and started the soul engine, which let out a muffled rumbling sound before the black soul car drove off. Tang Wuling rubbed his stomach. Although it didn't hurt, he was still furious in his heart and thought to himself, "These city people are truly too tyrannical." Tang Wuling followed the stream of people which dispersed after leaving the train station. When he turned around to look, he only saw these words plastered on a sign, "Easty Soul Train Station." As he looked at this huge structure that was the train station, Tang Wuling couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Compared to the largest building in Gloridown City, this train station was even more grand. He turned back around and surveyed his surroundings. Reflected in his eyes was a wide street with many skyscrapers off in the distance. All kinds of soul cars could be seen on the streets as they constantly sped about. The stream of people was simply bustling with activity. This all combined together to give one a feeling of constriction. Shrinking into his body, Tang Wuling rummaged through his rucksack for his water bottle and quickly drank a mouthful. After taking a drink of water, he rummaged through his rucksack once again and took out a slip of paper. This slip of paper was written for him by his father. His father had written what he should do once he arrived in Easty City. Right at that moment, a middle-aged man that with slim build walked over with a beaming smile. "Little friend, is this your first time coming to Easty City? Where are your parents?" Tang Wuling looked at his slip of paper. The very first thing the paper said was, "Don't trust strangers easily." He raised his head and glanced at the middle-aged man before shaking his head. Without speaking to the man, he quickly walked off. The direction he headed in had a tower and and on top of it was written, Administrative Law Enforcement. Tang Wuling asked the two officers in uniform as he neared the tower, "Hello, Uncle Police Officer. Can you tell me where the regular bus to the East Sea Academy is?" For the famous East Sea Academy, every year around registration time, there would be regular buses near the train station that would take students to the academy. As long as he found the bus, he would be able to go to the academy without a hitch. One of the officers pointed to a location not too far away and said, "It's right over there. Child, where's your family?" Tang Wuling straightened his posture and answered, "Uncle, I'm not little anymore. Thank you." After he finished speaking, Tang Wuling turned around and ran off in the direction the officer had pointed in. Sure enough, after passing through the crowd of people, Tang Wuling saw a sign with white words on a blue background that said, East Sea Academy. Under the sign was a chair, and behind the chair were several 17 to 18-year-old youths in blue sportswear. When they saw Tang Wuling walk over, a black-haired girl smiled and said, "Little brother, are you here to report?" The black-haired girl had a pair of red phoenix eyes, a moderate build and a sweet appearance that gave a feeling of warmth. Chapter 34, reporting in. "Hello, elder sister. My name is Tang Wuling. I'm here to report," Tang Wuling said politely. Lu Yushin was a bit surprised when she sized up the little boy in front of her. He looked to be about 11 or 12 years old, but he was actually a new student here to register. Since he definitely had an academy's recommendation, this meant he was actually just 9 years old. Although he was young, he still had a very pretty appearance. That's right. Lu Yushin had to use pretty to describe this boy's appearance. He had large eyes and long eyelashes that even made her a bit jealous. In front of this pretty boy, she couldn't help but be at a loss as her face cramped up a bit. "Hello, my name is Lu Yushin. I'm a first grader at the East Sea Advanced Academy and I'm in charge of receiving new students this year. I'm your senior sister here. Come and fill out this form and afterwards, show me a recommendation letter from your elementary academy." Lu Yushin passed a form to Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling relaxed a bit in his heart as he took a furtive glance at the senior sister in front of him. Lu Yushin watched as Tang Wuling filled out the form and couldn't help but read out loud as he did so. Tang Wuling, 9 years old. Graduated from Blue-Bound City's Red Mountain Elementary Academy. Rank 11 Plant System Soulmaster. Martial Soul, Blue Silver Grass. Ah. Your martial soul is blue silver grass. Tang Wuling nodded. Lu Yushin smiled sweetly. To be able to reach rank 11 at your age with a martial soul like blue silver grass, it truly isn't easy at all. When he didn't hear the usual disdain in the senior sister's words, Tang Wuling's gained a much more favorable impression of her. He scratched his head as he said, "Elder sister, you'll even recognize a soul master who is blue silver grass for a martial soul?" Lu Yushin smiled. Of course our academy recognizes it, even if it is just an all-right martial soul. Soul masters have been developing for several tens of thousands of years all the way until now. The martial soul isn't nearly as important as it was back in ancient times. You can definitely improve it with spirit souls and furthermore, you'll discover that martial souls won't be that significant in your upper years. More importantly is your soul power rank and your talent with mechas. After all, a mecha can turn a soul master with an ordinary martial soul into a powerhouse. So you must cultivate properly, little brother. In the future you can also just call me senior sister. Thank you, senior sister. Tang Wuling wholeheartedly thanked his pretty senior sister. Her words had dispelled much of the worries Tang Wuling had upon first arriving in such a large city. Lu Yushin looked over Tang Wuling's recommendation letter before stamping it and handing it back to him along with a small metal placard. Wear this metal placard around your neck as it's proof that you've been admitted to the academy when you get to the gates. You still need to go check in and receive your supplies. Get on the bus behind me and we'll take off for the academy once a few more students arrive. Tang Wuling thanked her once again and greeted the others as he walked over to the big bus. An upper grade student from East Sea Academy who stood beside Lu Yushin gave Tang Wuling a glance as his mouth twitched. "Yushin, what are you telling that bumpkin? He's already carrying such a big burden with his martial soul being blue silver grass. That's a trash martial soul and it's not like all blue silver grass martial souls possess the lineage of our senior's blue silver king." Lu Yushin stared at him wide-eyed. "You can't discriminate against our junior brother. He's only 9 years old and he was able to cultivate his blue silver grass to the realm of soul master. How would you know if that blue silver grass carries the lineage of the king or not? Don't cheat those younger than you. Haven't you ever heard of that before? Who knows if our pretty junior brother will become a proud son of heaven in the future?" Tang Wuling hadn't heard those words, otherwise he would have viewed this senior sister even better. The East Sea Academy's bus was exceptionally wide and could hold 50 people. There were already some on the bus. Some of them were his peers, while the others were adults. These were clearly parents who had come to accompany their children to report. A trace of envy flashed through Tang Wuling's eyes. Even if his willpower surpassed his peer, he was still just a 9-year-old child in the end. How could he not wish for his mother and father to accompany him here? He sat on a seat by the window and peered through to observe the unfamiliar city as he tightly hugged his arms. This was where he was going to live from now on. After finding the East Sea Academy's bus, most of his nervousness had been dispelled. In this strange new environment, however, he still felt as lost and helpless as he did before. He still clearly remembered the meaningful and heartfelt words his father had told him before he left. Lin, you must remember that in this world, the only person you can completely trust and rely on is yourself. No matter what kind of setbacks you encounter, or bad affairs you run into, you have to ask yourself if this was just because you weren't powerful enough. When these words were spoken to a 9-year-old child, they had a shocking impact. After separating from his mother and father, he could only rely on himself now. He lowered his head and peered down at the modest-looking heavy silver rings on his wrists. The rings originally had extra space which could have been used for his luggage. Instead, Mang Tian had him bring his 1,000 refined tungsten hammers in addition to the 1,000 refined heavy silver hammers he was already bringing. With only 1/8 of a cubic meter of space, there naturally wouldn't be much room left after those 4 hammers. Tang Wuling closed his eyes and rested. He went over the words of his father and his teacher once more and thought, "I can do it." Subconsciously, he had regained his confidence. Tang Wuling quickly fell asleep in a dazed state. When the bus began making its way to the academy, Tang Wuling woke up and looked out the window. The bus was already full. Everyone else was accompanied by their parents, leaving him the only one who was sitting alone. He watched as the scenery outside of the window changed to stores that lined the streets. The bus was traveling amongst an endless stream of vehicles. Urgency and the scent of steel permeated the atmosphere. Everyone on the streets were bustling about. At the very least, it was countless times busier than the streets of Blue-Bound City. A lofty building slid into view after the 20-minute long bus ride. In front of them was a high wall. "We've arrived at the academy. Please get off the bus now, everybody." A familiar voice came from the front, drawing Tang Wuling's attention. It was senior sister Lu Yushin who had been sitting all the way at the front. She greeted all of the students, along with their parents, who had come to report in. When Tang Wuling hastily got off the bus, Lu Yushin instantly recognized him as this junior brother of hers had left a profound impression upon her. "Ah, that's right. Tang Wuling, come with me in a moment." Chapter 35, Roommates. The wall in front of them was precisely a part of East Sea Academy. Not too far off were the large stone academy gates which gave off an imposing feeling. East Sea Academy was a large academy which was actually comprised of both an intermediate academy and an advanced academy. Lu Yushin was a student of the advanced academy. One simply couldn't assume that the intermediate academy and the advanced academy were just a single step apart from each other. In reality, the two had a myriad of differences between one another. The intermediate academy still fell under a compulsory education, so it didn't require any tuition fees. East Sea Academy was a soulmaster academy and the intermediate academy took up 2/3 of the total area. On the other hand, the advanced academy, which only took up 1/3 of the area, was still the most important part of the academy. As long as one was a soulmaster and resided within the greater area of East Sea City, or had a recommendation letter, one would be able to enter the intermediate academy and receive a soulmaster's education. They would study at the intermediate academy for 6 years. After graduating, students would then be able to take the entrance exam to enter an advanced soulmaster academy, but no more than a tenth of the applicants pass. Advanced academies weren't part of the compulsory education, so a series of rigorous exams would be used to test the applicants. Anyone who was accepted into an advanced academy would definitely be considered an elite. If it was said that elementary academies taught the basic soulmaster and martial soul knowledge, then intermediate academies taught students how to use this knowledge in the direction in which they take to cultivate their martial souls. Their studies still wouldn't truly begin until they entered an advanced academy. Tang Wuling passed through the gates and began walking on a wide, tree-lined road that cut through a courtyard. The road was paved with limestone, which gave it a simple and unadorned appearance. Lu Yushin smiled. For the sake of everyone's safety, the Academy doesn't allow the use of vehicles within its grounds. If any vehicles enter campus grounds, they will have to immediately head off to the side and into the underground parking lot. The Advanced Academy division is on the west side, while the rest of the campus is part of the Intermediate Academy. Thanks to the senior sister's introductions, Tang Wuling quickly understood that the Academy wasn't as simple as he had first thought. The Intermediate Academy school building was located on the east side of the campus grounds. It was a massive building with 12 floors in total. The upperclassmen would be in the higher floors while the newer students would be on the lower floors. Being a first-grader student himself, Tang Wuling would be attending classes on the first and second floors. Those are the administrative officers over there. Go on over and report in. Your dormitory should be behind the school building. If you need anything in the future, come over to the Advanced Academy and find me. I'm a first grader in class 1 of the Advanced Academy. Thank you, senior sister. As she looked at the junior brother who had thanked her countless times, Liu Yushin couldn't help but giggle and smile. No need to be so restrained. The atmosphere in the academy is very good. I wish you good luck. You'll be assigned a class once you're done reporting. Then you'll be tested. You'll gain some benefits if you do well in these tests. Tang Wuling's eyes followed the departing figure of Liu Yushin until he couldn't see her anymore. It was only then that he entered the administration building. Thanks to the recommendation as well as the medal placard Liu Yushin had given him, the enrollment procedures were completed without a hitch. 2 sets of the school uniform were provided free of charge, as well as a dormitory key. He wouldn't receive any learning materials until his first class. He had been assigned to class 5 of the first graders. From now on, he was a new student at East Academy. Tang Wuling greeted everyone as he walked past the school building. He soon arrived at the dormitory, which was nearly as tall as the school building as it also contained 12 floors. His dorm room was on the second floor, room number 205. The corridor was noisy and in disarray as countless new students were reporting in during these last few days. The noise also wasn't limited to just the new students. Parents who accompanied their children were also contributing to the chaos. After some difficulties, Tang Wuling was able to find his dorm room. The door was already open and there was already someone inside. Inside of the room were 2 bunk beds, enough to accommodate 4 people. In addition, there were 2 square desks, 4 chairs, 2 cabinets and a roof lamp. This was the entirety of the room's features. The 2 bottom bunks were already occupied and the occupants cast their gazes towards Tang Wuling as he walked into the room. The one on the bottom left bunk was even taller than Tang Wuling. He was at least half a head taller than Tang Wuling in addition to having a thicker build. He had short hair and eyes that bulged outward somewhat. Even at such a young age, he had an air of ferocity around him. The student on the right side was thinner and weaker looking in comparison. His young nose was already supporting a pair of glasses, giving him a scholarly appearance. In fact, he was even holding a book at that moment. Hello, my name is Tang Wuling. I have just arrived. Tang Wuling looked at the 2 occupants on the left and right bottom bunks, acknowledging them as he introduced himself. The frail-looking student nodded and said, "My name is Yan Xiao." The Yan, from Cloud, and the Xiao, from Big and Small. Tang Wuling smiled as he nodded in acknowledgement. The tall student on the other side rolled his eyes and said, "Newcomer, clean the room first." Tang Wuling was a newcomer, so he was unclear about the current situation and could only nod. Oh. There was a broom in the corner and a cleaning rag along with a wash bowl on the table. He took the bowl and went out to fill it up with water. Yan Xiao shot a glance at that tall student. "Zhou Tangxi, what are you pretending for?" Zhou Tangxi mischievously laughed and got off from the bed. "You're the mastermind, so you won't interfere. I don't like how pretty that newcomer looks, so if we're going to be staying in the same room from now on, I need to give him a show of strength. These chores are his to do now. As long as I tell him to do it, he'll go to it. He's clearly a soft egg. If I don't bully someone like him, then who else would I bully?" Yan Xiao sighed. "Be careful so you aren't met with retribution." Zhou Tangxi snorted in disdain. "By him." As he said this, he grabbed the things Tang Wuling had put on the top bunk. He unzipped the cloth bag and shook all the things within it onto the floor. There was some plain clothing, some goods for personal use, and a quilt scattered all over the floor. Yan Xiao stared blankly at him. "You're crossing the line here." Zhou Tangxi laughed. Look, what are these toys? Could that brat be a beggar? This blanket even has a flower stitched into it. How ridiculous." At that moment, Tang Wuling returned with the wash bowl. He was shocked the moment he entered the room. The floor was scattered with his things and Zhou Tangxi was holding his bag. His blanket, clothes and personal goods were all over the floor. Even the 2 uniforms were on the floor. The floor was dusty and clearly, his things had already been covered in dust. "What are you doing?" Tang Wuling put down the wash bowl and furiously asked. Zhou Tangxi curled up his lips. "I'm not doing anything. I'm just looking at what a bumpkin like you brought here. Pick it up." Tang Wuling's voice had already turned cold. Zhou Tangxi raised an eyebrow with narrowed eyes, making him look even more fierce. "Who do you think you're talking to? Pick it up." Tang Wuling's voice was almost sinister now. Zhou Tangxi frowned as he stared at Tang Wuling. He stepped on the blanket, forcefully rubbing it into the floor. The place he stepped on was precisely the flower design that was stitched into the blanket. Dumbfounded, Tang Wuling could only mumble. "That was embroidered by my little sister." Chapter 36. Fight. My little sister embroidered that. The little flower design on the blanket had purple petals while the rest of it was silver. Although it wasn't perfect, it was still a memento from Naya. Tang Wuling still clearly remembered that time. He was laughing by Naya's side as she embroidered the blanket. He had even teased her and said, "These small crooked flowers still aren't as pretty as you. Remember this, you brat. I'm the one in charge here." Zhou Tangxi pointed at himself with his thumb. Sitting on the other bed, Yan Xiao suddenly felt something wrong. Something seemed to influence the room's atmosphere. It now felt colder than before. After sensing this, he saw Tang Wuling slowly raise his head. His eyes had already turned red and his fists were clenched. There was actually a papa sound coming from his knuckles. Zhou Tangxi looked down from above and said, "Are you going to bite me?" Tang Wuling moved, charging at Zhou Tangxi like an artillery shell as he swung out his right arm. A series of explosions resounded in the air as the fist flew, arriving in front of Zhou Tangxi in a flash. Zhou Tangxi wasn't an idiot and knew that Tang Wuling might explode at any moment. He was already prepared, and as soon as he saw that fist flying towards him, his right hand moved to deflect it. Pa. Thump. Hualala. The first sound was Zhou Tangxi's palm meeting Tang Wuling's fist. His judgment had been accurate, and he had even managed to meet the fist head-on. Unfortunately for him, it was like an ant trying to shake a large tree. He wasn't able to move Tang Wuling's fist at all. The second sound was Tang Wuling's fist colliding with Zhou Tangxi's chest. There was a muffled sound of an impact, and he was sent flying through the air. The final sound was made when Zhou Tangxi flew through the window with barely any resistance. He had flown out of the dormitory from the second floor. A miserable scream followed shortly after. By now, Yan Xiao had already gotten off his bed and was foolishly staring at Tang Wuling, who released an aura similar to that of a tyrannical dragon. He didn't even know that the book in his hands had dropped to the floor. Zhou Tangxi's martial soul was the Titan Ape. He was a rank 11 power system martial soul master. The only reason he was assigned to class 5 and to this dorm room was because his soul power wasn't that high. Still, he was the strongest person Yan Xiao had ever met that was his age. Yan Xiao was absolutely certain that Tang Wuling's punch had contained no soul power at all when it sent Zhou Tangxi flying. That punch was thrown with only brute strength. With his martial soul being the Titan Ape, Zhou Tangxi's bones were tougher and harder than an ordinary person's. As a result, he was actually heavier than an adult at the age of 9. Even with such a solid body, he was sent flying through the window by Tang Wuling's punch. Just how much strength was required to do this? Right at that moment, a person wearing an ice gold face and clothed in black sportswear entered the room. He looked at the things scattered all over the floor and wrinkled his brows before kicking Tang Wuling's items to the side. He coldly said to Tang Wuling, who was obstructing his way, "Get out of the way." Tang Wuling's unstable state of mind was filled with the image of Naya's smiling face at this moment. When Zhou Tangxi had stepped on the flower that Naya embroidered for him, he had seen it as Zhou Tangxi stepping on Naya herself. When that icy and arrogant youngster kicked away his things, it was like a fuse had been lit. "You're seeking death." Tang Wuling snarled as he furiously charged at the youth in black with another punch. The icily arrogant youth didn't even spare him a glance as he took half a step to the side, avoiding Tang Wuling's punch. His elbow swept across Tang Wuling's back as his left foot extended below. Immediately, Tang Wuling fell over under his own strength in addition to the youth's. He wasn't flying towards the window, but rather, the door. Yan Xiao swallowed his saliva. In the elementary academy, he was known as the mastermind, but now, he felt as if he wasn't smart enough. What kind of situation was this? "You bastard." Tang Wuling snarled once again. This time, his voice spread throughout the whole hall. Like the wind, he charged back into the dorm room and towards the icily arrogant youth once again. A trace of surprise flashed through the arrogant youth's eyes. He hadn't restrained his strength just now, yet Tang Wuling had actually gotten up so fast. Moreover, when he had struck Tang Wuling from behind with his elbow, he had clearly felt a tremor from Tang Wuling's back which issued a force that wasn't inferior to his own. He jumped, twisted his body, and unleashed a whirling kick. These 3 movements were completed as smooth as floating clouds and flowing water. Not only did he avoid Tang Wuling's charge, he actually stepped on Tang Wuling's back and kicked him away, causing him to smash onto the floor when he fell. The wooden floor was scattered and smashed while Tang Wuling's clothes were all cut up. The arrogant youth landed nimbly on Tang Wuling's blanket. Moreover, he had actually landed on the flower embroiderment of knives by accident. Tang Wuling bellowed with grief and indignation. You city people are also rotten. A pure white light was released from Tang Wuling's 10-year soul ring which rose up from his feet. Slender vine-like strands of blue silver grass suddenly appeared. All of it attacked the arrogant youth. Tang Wuling's first soul skill was the 10-year soul skill of blue silver grass. Bind. Blue silver grass covered the entirety of the room in but a moment. Even though the arrogant youth was exceptionally agile, he still couldn't dodge all of these vines in such a narrow space. His response was still extremely quick. He raised his right hand, which began to emit a dazzling golden radiance while the yellow soul ring rose up from his feet. A dazzling flash arced through the air as it chopped towards the blue silver grass. The move was extraordinarily accurate as he aimed to cut down every single strand of blue silver grass with a golden dagger. Although the strands of blue silver grass were struck, they hadn't been cut apart like he had imagined. Not good. The arrogant youth thought to himself, if he had retreated immediately, he could have rushed out of the dorm room. Instead, he had tried yet had been unable to cut down the blue silver grass. Now, even more strands of blue silver grass had appeared and moved to engulf him. The soul ring underneath his feet began to shine brightly as the dagger's blade in his hands began to twinkle. There was also a quiet dragon roar that resounded out as he attempted, with all his strength, to throw off the blue silver grass that was binding him. However, a fist appeared in front of him at that moment. Bang! Chapter 37. Punishment. The icily arrogant youth was sent flying in a flash after being struck by Tang Wuling's explosive punch. As his fist had connected with the youth's face, Tang Wuling released the binding of his blue silver grass, allowing the arrogant youth to fly out of the room like an artillery shell. With a boom, the arrogant youth was embedded into the wall of the hall. Yes, he was embedded. In front of Tang Wuling's power, he couldn't even resist. The arrogant youth was an agility system battle soul master, so he excelled in quick attacks. Their weakness was that agility system battle soul masters lacked defensive capabilities. If they were hit, especially by someone like Tang Wuling whose innate strength surpassed the power system battle soul masters, they would immediately be knocked down. As a result, that arrogant youth had already lost consciousness the moment he was sent flying. Tang Wuling was gasping for breath amidst the disarray of his room. Yan Xiao was already hiding in the corner of his bed as he stared at Tang Wuling fearfully. For a moment, he was completely at a loss as to what he had just witnessed. Was this guy even human? Even that dressy guy was sent flying by him. Tang Wuling crouched down and gently picked up his blanket. He brushed the dust off of it and held it tight. Fortunately, the blanket hadn't been damaged, just dirtied. What's going on? Right at that moment, a firm voice came from the hall. 10 minutes later. East the Academy's intermediate teaching building. So in conclusion, this tragedy was triggered over a blanket? Long Henshu coldly looked at the 4 boys in front of him. His frowning expression was like a drop of water. Zhou Tangxi, Yan Xiao, Tang Wuling, and that arrogant youth were all standing side by side. The arrogant youth's eyes had an ice cold radiance in them which would occasionally glance at Tang Wuling from time to time. Zhou Tangxi's expression was ashen, and he was covered with bruises from head to toe. If one were attentive, they would discover a trace of fear in his eyes which refused to even make contact with Tang Wuling. Yan Xiao was the one who thoroughly explained what had transpired. After hearing Yan Xiao's account, Long Henshu grasped what had happened. Tang Wuling stood there with his blanket firmly in hand, simply looking at the embroidered flower with a lowered head. His large and pretty eyes were filled with stubbornness. Zhou Tangxi, originally with a martial soul like yours, you would have been assigned to class 3. However, your soul power rank was too low. Now it seems that your moral conduct is equally as low. Getting beaten up serves you right. You'll be in class 5 permanently. Long Henshu coldly stated. Zhou Tangxi wanted to refute him, but when he saw Long Henshu's frowning expression, he didn't dare speak. You two also. Fighting as soon as you enter the academy, you'll both be in class 5. Getting beaten up only serves you right too. Long Henshu said this to Yan Xiao and that arrogant youth this time. The arrogant youth didn't seem to understand Long Henshu's words at all as his gaze was on Tang Wuling the whole time. His cheeks were quite swollen after Tang Wuling's punch. If he hadn't recoiled his head so quickly, he feared that he wouldn't have many teeth left after Tang Wuling's terrifying hit. Yan Xiao refuted in shock. Director Long, I wasn't involved in the fight at all. From the beginning to end, I was simply a spectator. Long Henshu coldly answered. You're all in the same dorm room. If you see them fighting and don't take any action to stop it, how can you say that's a good thing? Bet you're the righteous one. You're so sly at such a young age. How could you grow up to be any good? Do you have anything left to say? As for you, Long Henshu's gaze switched to Tang Wuling. You're so good. You want to fight, 1 against 2. This time's matter can't be blamed on you as you were provoked. It's good that a man is brave, so I won't punish you. However, your martial soul is just blue silver grass, so you're stuck in class 5. Tang Wuling raised his head in astonishment. He had thought that he would receive the heaviest punishment. After all, he was the one who hit them, and not lightly either. Zhou Tangxi was covered in purple bruises while the arrogant youth's face was swollen like a steamed bun, yet he wasn't being punished. Thank you for your fairness, Tang Wuling said hastily. Long Henshu indifferently said, although there was a cause for the fight, there's still a need to compensate for the damages. I'll give you the costs to repair the window, the bed, and the walls later so you can pay it back. Tang Wuling was stunned. Pay up. He only had the 3,000 federal coins that his father had given him. This was his pocket money for the whole semester, because education was compulsory. Food and living expenses were all covered, so there wasn't many things he needed to pay for. Go now. You can continue fighting if you want, but next time, it'll be added to your record. The result of the battle, along with a record about your talent to become a mecha master, will affect whether or not you'll be accepted into an advanced academy in the future. If you have the courage, then go fight. But if you really want to fight, then you better not let the academy find out about it. Otherwise, there will be a severe punishment. After exiting the teacher's office, Long Henshu's strict voice still lingered in their ears. However, Tang Wuling's mood was much better now. Even if he didn't know how much he had to pay for the repairs, the academy had dealt with this affair impartially and justly. They hadn't been biased towards the others just because his martial soul was no good. Outside of the teaching building, Long Henshu glanced at the secretary to the side with narrowed eyes. Give me Tang Wuling's profile to look at. Director, isn't that child's martial soul just blue silver grass? The secretary asked in surprise. The solemn expression on Long Henshu's face previously had disappeared. In its place was a slight smile. Blue silver grass? I fear it's not that simple. He was able to beat up 2 people single-handedly on his first day, and one of those kids is from the Shi family. How could a brat with only blue silver grass accomplish this? Moreover, he was able to cultivate a trash martial soul like blue silver grass to rank 11 at the young age of 9 years old. Just this would make him a prodigy. Contrary to what you might think, we must pay close attention to him. They returned to the dorm room, but it was still a mess. No one had cleaned it up for them. Tang Wuling silently placed his blanket on the table, then picked up all of his things. Zhou Tangxi stood off to the side, clenching and opening his fists tightly several times. The icily arrogant youth glanced at Yan Xiao who was on the bottom of their bunk bed, then pointed upwards. You go up. Yan Xiao was stunned for a moment. However, in the face of that arrogant youth's sinister expression, he chose to smile and speedily cleaned up his things before climbing to the top bunk. He was a clever and resourceful person. Why would he go and provoke a volcano that could erupt at any moment? The icily arrogant youth's hands flashed with a brilliant light for a moment, causing a clean bedsheet to mysteriously appear in his hands. Afterwards, he spread the sheet over the bed. Chapter 38. Reparations? As for the bunk bed on the other side of the room, the top bunk had been destroyed while the bottom bunk was Zhou Tangxi's. Tang Wuling tidied up his things, then put them on the bottom bunk. After setting down his things, he turned around and coldly looked at Zhou Tangxi. You get up. Zhou Tangxi roared. Tang Wuling coldly answered. Get lost. You. Zhou Tangxi wanted to get up in anger. Don't be so impulsive. Have you already forgotten what Director Long said? Could it be that you don't want to become a mech master in the future? Yan Xiao said as he jumped down from the top bunk. Zhou Tangxi's breathing was clearly a bit ragged as Tang Wuling picked up the crumbled top bunk, tore it apart, and then threw it out the window. The entire top bunk had been obliterated completely. It should be this one. a middle-aged academy staff member said before he entered the room with a wooden bed. He looked at the queer atmosphere between the four boys and chuckled to himself. That's right, fighting on the first day of school. You boys definitely have a bright future. If you all want to continue fighting, then come hit this bed with all your strength. It costs 10,000 federal coins. So go ahead and fight. My bonus will be even bigger that way. As he said this, he lifted up the bedboard and placed it on the top bunk. The bedboard went in perfectly. 10,000 federal coins? Tang Wuling went wide-eyed in shock. It was just a bed's board. Teacher, do we have to buy that one, or can we go out and buy one? Tang Wuling hurriedly asked. The teacher snorted and said, do you think the academy is your house? Destruction of property is a serious crime here. I assume you're Tang Wuling then. The costs to repair the window, bedboard, and wall is a total of 34,000 federal coins. Hurry up and go pay for the repair costs at the administration office. 34,000 federal coins? Tang Wuling was stunned when he heard this number. All the money he had earned during his 3 years of forging had only totaled up to be 30,000 federal coins. This was simply too expensive. When Zhou Tangxi, who had been glaring at Tang Wuling, heard this, he immediately climbed up to the top bunk without uttering another word. Tang Wuling sat on his bed and pondered over what to do. 34,000 federal coins. It was 34,000 federal coins. My name is Shishi. The icily arrogant youth had walked up to Tang Wuling and boldly introduced himself. You're welcome. Tang Wuling subconsciously answered. You're welcome. The stern expression on Shishi's face collapsed at that moment. Who was he calling you're welcome? One, Shishi said as he gnashed his teeth. I said, my name is Shishi. Tang Wuling woke up from his trance and raised his head to look at Shishi. Actually, he had noticed earlier that this youth was the one he had encountered at the Seoul train station. What are you doing? Tang Wuling coldly asked. Shishi's eyes flickered with a cold light as he said, come and fight with me outside of the academy. At that moment, his heart was full of humiliation. He simply couldn't understand how with his strength, he could lose to Brat with a trash martial soul like blue silver brass. This Brat had such a powerful fist that even now, Shishi had some difficulty speaking. From childhood up till now, he had never been beaten up before. He couldn't accept Long Henchu's words or this stain on his record. He was simply feeling vexed. Get lost. Tang Wuling furiously repeated the words he had previously said to Zhou Tangxi to Shishi this time. What did you say? A powerful and chilling aura exploded outwards from Shishi's body. Tang Wuling looked at him with a pair of fiery eyes. You're still not done bullying people. 34,000 federal coins. Do you know how much 34,000 federal coins is to me? Since you're seeking death, I'll beat you to death then. In the worst case, I won't be able to attend this academy anymore. You're still bothered by that? Shishi stared at him blankly. He had never had to worry about money, so 34,000 federal coins was nothing to him. Tang Wuling answered, maybe 34,000 federal coins isn't much to you city people, but as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't be able to earn that much even after working for several years. Don't provoke me any further, otherwise you'll just be risking your life. As Shishi stared at Tang Wuling's red eyes, he wasn't sure why, but his imposing manner diminished a bit. I'll shell out the money, so come fight with me. Shishi coldly exclaimed. Tang Wuling asked in a daze, you'll pay for it. Shishi saw the redness fading away from Tang Wuling's eyes and was pleasantly surprised. He wasn't sure what he should say now to this brat. I'll pay. Shishi said with gritted teeth. Great. Tang Wuling was afraid he would renege, so he instantly accepted. It was 34,000 federal coins after all. When are we fighting? Just one battle and he would earn 34,000 federal coins? He would even let himself get beaten up for that much money. In front of Tang Wuling's eager appearance, Shishi couldn't help but feel uneasy. Tomorrow, he said, before turning around and walking away. He wanted to go treat his swollen face first, otherwise he would have to endure this kind of appearance even longer. After exiting the room, a towel appeared out of nowhere and covered his face. As Tang Wuling watched him leave, he thought to himself, these city people really are wealthy. Yan Xiao coughed. It's time for lunch now. Tang Wuling, do you want to go together? Sounds good. Tang Wuling nodded as he had gotten hungry long ago. Zhou Tangxi jumped down from the top bunk. The unwillingness and indignance had already disappeared from his face and he was clearly less hostile towards Tang Wuling than before. The cause for this change was very simple. It was because of the repair costs that totaled up to 34,000 federal coins. Tang Wuling wasn't the only one who wasn't rich there. Zhou Tangxi also came from an ordinary family. He had also been given a scare when he heard the outrageous cost for the repairs. This incident only started because of him. Tang Wuling, however, hadn't asked him for any compensation at all. This action gave him a better impression of Tang Wuling. Yan Xiao led the way with Tang Wuling and Zhou Tangxi following behind. The intermediate division's dining hall was a small building located to the side of the main school building. The building had 3 floors, which accommodates all 6 grades of the intermediate academy. First and second graders ate on the first floor. The dining hall only had tables with no chairs. This was one of the customs of East Academy. Students must eat while standing in order to increase their sense of urgency. There were 3 windows labeled 1, 2 and 3. Yan Xiao explained this to Tang Wuling, allowing him to understand that the third window had free food. The second window was subsidized, while the first window needed complete payment from the student. Naturally, the first window provided the best food, followed by the second window, while the third window provided the most basic foods. On the board next to the third window was written, steamed buns. Zhou Tangxi glanced at Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling, since the academy doesn't let us fight, how about we have a contest to see who can eat the most steamed buns? Do you dare? Tang Wuling looked at him. Are you sure there'll be enough steamed buns? Zhou Tangxi answered. Of course. The third window is all you can eat. It can supply as much as you want. After all, us soul masters eat much more food than ordinary people. Tang Wuling asked, what are the stakes in this eating contest? Zhou Tangxi replied, whoever loses will be in charge of cleaning the dorm room. So if I lose, I'll wash all of your dirty clothes. How about it? Tang Wuling released a gentle sigh. I'm very hungry. Shishi's name sounds like thank you in Chinese. Tang Wuling misheard and reflexively smirked back with you're welcome when Shishi introduced himself. Chapter 39. You can't beat me in eating either. Tang Wuling discovered an issue. It seemed that he ate more while standing up than when seated. There was already quite a crowd surrounding him. This guy's stomach isn't that big, yet how can he eat so much? He's about to break the record. I remember our intermediate academy steamed bun record is 43. How many has this guy eaten already? He's already broken the record by eating 45. How formidable. What's more, he doesn't even look like a big eater. The steamed buns are palm-sized too. The academy's steamed buns have always been this large. Zhou Tangxi had long since started to foolishly stare at Tang Wuling. He had always thought he could eat a lot. In fact, he had even managed to eat 20 steamed buns before becoming too full. This was simply ground meat along with vegetable soup. Tang Wuling not only ate the steamed buns, but he also drank the soup. Every 5 buns he would drink a large mouthful of soup. He looked as if he was truly enjoying himself. The palm-sized steamed buns were really delicious. They were stuffed with a big meatball on the inside. As soon as one bit into the bun, fatty juices would flow out. It truly was too delicious. What was most important, it still wasn't enough. I'll have to trouble everyone. Tang Wuling finished the 50th bun, then walked up to the third meal window. Yan Xiao patted Zhou Tangxi's shoulder. Let's go and get started on cleaning the room. Now that I know he can out-eat you, I finally understand why he's stronger. This is called the law of conservation of energy. The more one eats, the more strength they would have. Zhou Tangxi's face was decrepit as he took in this scene. Tang Wuling ordered another 20 steamed buns. Back at home, feeding Tang Wuling had been Tang Xiren and Lan Yue's greatest headache. This child was truly too capable in eating. Moreover, when Nai was there, the two were practically competing in how much they could eat. Zhou Tangxi's own eating ability was great in comparison with his peers. On the other hand, Tang Wuling was basically on a whole different level. After releasing a long sigh, Zhou Tangxi looked towards Tang Wuling. I never thought anyone could actually eat a whole cow before, but after seeing your eating prowess, I believe it to be possible now. I agreed to the bet, so I must accept this loss. I'll head back and begin cleaning first. You can continue on with setting your record. N. Tang Wuling hadn't been all that worried about winning or losing. For him, being able to eat until he was completely full was much more important. In the end, the Intermediate Academy's steamed bun record was set at 80 buns and 5 large bowls of vegetable soup. When Tang Wuling left the dining hall feeling perfectly satisfied, all eyes were on him. After returning to the dormitory, Zhou Tangxi was cleaning the room, but avoided Tang Wuling's laundry as Tang Wuling hadn't permitted it. Tang Wuling wished to wash it himself. Yan Xiao assisted Zhou Tangxi with cleaning the room. In the end, the room's atmosphere had become much more harmonious. Right as they were finishing up with cleaning the room, Shishi came in with a face wrapped in a towel. The swelling on his face had clearly been reduced by a lot, but it was still as unsightly as before. For you. He threw a paper bag towards Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling opened it and saw a pile of federal bills. In the face of all this money, Tang Wuling couldn't help but seem a bit dazed. When he had tried to earn 30,000 federal coins in Douluo City, it had taken him a full 3 years. For these wealthy people, however, it was simply pocket money. We start class tomorrow, so tomorrow night, after school, you'll come with me. Shishi coldly said. All right. Tang Wuling agreed without the slightest hesitation. Yan Xiao said, Shishi, just let it be. We'll be staying in the same dormitory for the next 6 years. Shishi coldly looked at him, then unceremoniously laid down on his bottom bunk. Tang Wuling asked Yan Xiao, there won't be any problems if I go out this afternoon, right? Yan Xiao answered, we haven't officially started classes yet, so naturally there won't be any issues. You just need to be back before lights go out. Otherwise, you'll be faced with disciplinary action. When he heard the words disciplinary action, Tang Wuling's heart tightened up for a moment. He didn't actually fear disciplinary action. Instead, he feared the potential fines. I'll be back by then. After washing his dirty clothes and blanket, Tang Wuling left the dormitory. According to Mang Tian's instructions, after arriving in East City, Tang Wuling needed to go to a place called the Blacksmiths Association. Mang Tian had given him the address of his workshop in East City. There wasn't anyone working there, but it still had a forging room for Tang Wuling to use. Mang Tian had told him that he needed to register at the Blacksmiths Association in order to be able to accept tasks. These tasks would hone his skills. Every month, Mang Tian would come and inspect his progress as well as give him some instructions. After accepting his fate when fusing with the little brass snake, Gold Light, Tang Wuling had become much more focused on forging, especially after completing the 1,000 refinements. Completing the 1,000 refinements had made him understand that in the future, he would likely become a blacksmith like his teacher. Thus, he couldn't relax and had to continue refining his forging skills. Moreover, he could earn money by forging. In addition to supplementing his family's income, he needed money to wander the continent in search of Naya in the future. He hadn't asked Yan Xiao where the Blacksmiths Association was because he didn't want the other students to know he was a blacksmith. He first went to the administration building to pay the fines before leaving the academy's campus. East City's unfamiliar atmosphere once again pressed down on Tang Wuling's heart. Glorybound City really is the best. It was so nice and peaceful there. Although he didn't know where the Blacksmiths Association was, he still had a mouth below his nose. He could always just ask someone. After making several inquiries, he gained a rough understanding of where the Blacksmiths Association was located. East City was very big. In fact, it was several times larger than Glorybound City. For the sake of saving money, Tang Wuling walked the whole journey to the Blacksmiths Association. It wasn't too bad. The Blacksmiths Association was not that far from East City Academy and Tang Wuling had eaten his fill during lunch. After walking for half an hour, his destination was already in sight. The Blacksmiths Association was easily recognizable with its grey-colored building and height of 30 floors along with, at the very top, a design of a hammer. With this design, there wasn't even a need to engrave the association's name onto a plate. Tang Wuling walked through the big glass doors on the first floor and was immediately faced with a 10-meter tall wall with an 8-meter tall golden hammer sculpture on it. Although the Blacksmiths Association wasn't as rich as the Mecacraftsmen's Association, it was still a necessary existence. A first-rate blacksmith's status in society was exceedingly high. In fact, their status was comparable to that of Mecacraftmen grandmasters. In order to make a first-rate mecha, first-rate materials were naturally needed. As such, first-rate blacksmiths were needed to process first-rate materials. The lounge on the first floor was very spacious and empty. There were only 2 young ladies dressed in grey at the reception desk. Little brother, who are you looking for? When they saw Tang Wuling walk towards them, one of the 2 ladies who had a sweet-looking appearance took the initiative to stand up and greet him. Tang Wuling bashfully said, I'm here to take the blacksmith's ranking test. Chapter 40, Ken Yue, Poochie. The well-developed young lady to the side laughed and said with a smile, look at him, his face is already red. Little brother, your eyes are really pretty. The sweet-looking young lady rebuked, don't be so noisy, Yuan. Little brother, you want to take the blacksmith's ranking test? Tang Wuling nodded and answered somewhat anxiously, yes. The sweet young lady said, where is your family? Or your teacher? Tang Wuling shook his head. My teacher had me come alone and told me to find someone called Grandmaster Ken Yue. When they heard the name Ken Yue, the 2 young ladies' expressions stiffened and the sweet young lady hastily said, please wait a moment then. I'll go ask if Grandmaster Ken Yue is available right now. Have you ever spoken to Grandmaster Ken over the soul communicator? Tang Wuling shook his head once again. How could he possibly own a soul communicator? Although a soul communicator was convenient, the communication fees and the equipment costs were extraordinarily expensive. Even his hometown had only one fixed soul communicator. He was even planning to look for a coin-operated soul communicator to call his mother and father later and report that he was safe and sound. Grandmaster Ken, there's a child looking for you. N. That's right, he has really large eyes and is wearing plain clothes. The sweet-looking young lady said as she pressed down on a number to connect to Grandmaster Ken. After hanging up the communicator, the sweet young lady said to Tang Wuling, little brother, Grandmaster Ken has some time right now. Follow me. As she said this, she began guiding Tang Wuling to the side of the large hall. The well-developed lady, Yuan, stuck out her tongue as she watched them leave and said to herself, I couldn't even tell. The little guy actually knows Grandmaster Ken. When the soul elevator's metal doors opened up, Tang Wuling nearly jumped with fright. This was the first time he had ever seen anything like this. Come here. The sweet young lady didn't tease him at all. Rather, she gave him a tender smile. Tang Wuling went over to her side. The sweet young lady said, my name is Yan Xiaoling. Grandmaster Ken's office is on the 15th floor. I'll take you to see him, and then he will take you to conduct the blacksmith's ranking test. Thank you, big sister. Tang Wuling politely said. Yan Xiaoling looked at him, her gaze moving up and down, sizing him up. Although this child was wearing extremely plain clothing, he was still very good looking. Most of all were those big eyes of his, which could even make a girl jealous. Moreover, despite his simplicity, he was extraordinarily courteous, giving others a very good opinion of him. Ding. The elevator stopped on the 15th floor and the doors opened. The walls were made of a white metal while the ceiling and floors were white too. Neat and tidy. That was Tang Wuling's first impression. There were 2 rooms on both sides of the hall leading out of the elevator. Yan Xiaoling brought him to one of the doors which had Ken Yue's nameplate on it. She pressed the button above it. Grandmaster Ken, it's Yan Xiaoling. I've brought the child here. N. A deep voice was heard from within the room. Then the door opened. The office was approximately 30 square meters in size with a massive wooden desk that took up nearly a quarter of the room's space. Behind the wooden desk stood a man in his 40s. This man wasn't particularly tall, but he was absolutely well built. His shoulders were especially wide, with a black jacket resting on his deltoids. At this moment, he was looking at a design plan laid out on his desk. Grandmaster Ken. Yan Xiaoling softly called out, N. Ken Yue raised his head and looked over. His gaze immediately fell on Tang Wuling as he looked at him with curious eyes. You're Mang Tian's disciple? Yes. Hello, Grandmaster Ken. Teacher told me to greet you in his place, Tang Wuling said respectfully. Ken Yue's eyes wrinkled as he frowned. Mang Tian, that guy had always set his eyes on surpassing the peak, yet he actually took in such a young disciple like you. Let's go then. I'll bring you to take the blacksmith's ranking test. Blacksmiths lived in the world of metal and were completely unconcerned about otherworldly matters. Although he was unconvinced of Mang Tian accepting such a young disciple, the ranking test would verify everything. Yan Xiaoling said, Grandmaster, I'll go back down then. N. Ken Yue nodded as Yan Xiaoling smiled at Tang Wuling once more before heading off. Ken Yue brought Tang Wuling out of the room soon after and once again entered the soul elevator. They rode the elevator down with Yan Xiaoling, except this time, they were getting off on the 3rd floor. As the elevator descended, Ken Yue turned to Tang Wuling and said, little guy, Mang Tian never told me what rank blacksmith you are at right now. Tang Wuling shook his head. Teacher never told me either. He just told me to come take the test and accept some tasks after. He can accept tasks? Off to the side, Yan Xiaoling couldn't help but be surprised. In order to accept tasks it meant that he was at least a rank 2 blacksmith. Rank 1 blacksmiths weren't able to directly accept tasks. Instead, a higher ranked blacksmith had to accept the task and assign some of the work to them. Ken Yue asked again, then do you understand how blacksmith ranks are organized? Tang Wuling nodded. Teacher said that blacksmiths are divided into 9 ranks. Rank 1 and 2 blacksmiths are master ranks. Ranks 3 and 4 are grandmaster. Ranks 5 and 6 are master craftsmen. Rank 7 and 8 are saint craftsmen, and at the very peak of rank 9, they are divine craftsmen. N. Ken Yue nodded. Right at that moment, the elevator had reached the 3rd floor. Goodbye, big sister. Tang Wulin bid farewell to Yan Chaoling as he followed Ken Yue out of the elevator. Compared to the tranquil 15th floor, the 3rd floor of the Blacksmiths Association was much more noisy. Tang Wulin heard the familiar clanking sounds of blacksmiths that worked throughout the hall. Ken Yue brought Tang Wulin to the front desk and said to the staff member, "Open up the testing room for me and ask the surveyor to come over." "Grandmaster Ken, is this your disciple? He's so young. Is he even 12 years old?" The staff member curiously looked at Tang Wulin. Ken Yue took some forms from the staff member and handed them to Tang Wulin. "Fill these out first. Fill out your basic circumstances." "Yes." Tang Wulin took the form and began to seriously fill it out. Ken Yue read along from the side as he filled it out. Tang Wulin, born in Glorybound City, 9 years old. East Sea Academy's Intermediate Division, 1st grade. "You're only 9 years old?" At this matter, both he and the staff member were astonished. He was only 9 years old, yet he was coming to take the blacksmith's test. This hadn't happened in the Blacksmiths Association for many, many years. Historically, the youngest SD had been 8 years and 6 months old. Moreover, that person was now working on the Blacksmiths Association's 30th floor. That person was a once-in-a-lifetime blacksmithing genius. Now in front of their eyes was a child that was only 9 years old. If he was able to pass the blacksmith's test, then what would that signify? Ken Yue thought about this with even more interest because Tang Wuling had previously said that Mang Tian let him accept tasks directly. That meant this child was at least a rank 2 blacksmith. This was a record-breaking achievement. The staff member said, "Grandmaster Ken, testing room 3 is open. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read."